Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Hit Your Numbers. This week we've got something special for you. If you haven't seen already, James has started a new podcast called Field Notes with none other than Richard Washington from What Makes You Tick. Each week, James and Richard are going to be talking about 2 topics, 10 minutes each, and it's all practical insights from the front line of tech to help you make better decisions. It's great for sellers, it's great for sales leaders, and that's exactly why we're going to be sharing it here on this channel today. So have a listen, and then we'll be back with another episode of Hit Your Numbers next week. Until then, enjoy the podcast.
Do the chicken sound. Right, so let's explain what this is all about. So there's one question that salespeople and sales leaders are asking us every week, which is, what are you seeing in the market? And we're out there in the field learning. We're understanding what's happening. We're seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we're taking the best insights, the best lessons, and bringing it to you each week in just 2 topics, 10 minutes each, against the clock.
Welcome to the Field Notes podcast.
James, what are you seeing in the market right now that people might be missing?
Lots and lots and lots of bloated pipelines. People are having lots of big roast dinners, Rich, filling their bellies with potatoes and beef and peas and carrots and parsnips. And then over time, that just all disappears. And we're seeing this a lot in the sales organizations that we work with now. They just ram a lot of deals into the pipeline to hit a pipeline number, usually driven by low win rates. And then like 2-3 weeks before the end of the quarter, it's almost like someone's put a pin in their belly, and all of the pipelines fizzled out, and you've got sales reps and sales managers running around like headless chickens, discounting deals to get close to the number.
Do the chicken sound. Right, so let's explain what this is all about. So we both work in the same part of the market, but from different angles. So I'm on the talent side, you're on the enablement side. We get asked all the time the same question, which is, what are you seeing in the market? And the best conversations happen in private. So what we want to do is bring the real life questions that we're seeing and observing and learning from our clients, being out in the field, for our listeners. 20 minutes, 2 topics, 10 minutes per topic, against the clock. This is Field Notes. So topic 1, James, you're on the clock.
All right. So what I want to talk about this week, Rich, is pipeline bloat. So I alluded to it earlier. A lot of sales organizations at early stage, when they kind of start the business, they go out and buy a CRM, Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever it might be. And a lot of those come with default sales stages: prospecting, qualified, presentation, closing. Now, in most cases, a buyer doesn't buy like that, right? They do lots of different things, all the different stages. But because those are the default stages and we just want to get out there and start selling and building the business quick, we usually just run with those. And then the business grows, and you start plowing in more salespeople, more pressure, you raise money, targets get bigger, sometimes wild. You got to figure out a way of getting them. And one of the things that we just don't see that gets enough care is the stages, but also the steps and the exit criteria inside of them. Because what happens by default is we say to our sellers, look, you need to drive next steps. I think anyone that's listening to this, if you're a seller now, you've been a seller, you'll recognize that your boss says, like, what are the next steps? So did you drive next steps? Did you advance the deal in our pipeline? And when we're out with go-to-market teams of all different shapes and sizes, 9.9 out of 10 times they have what I would call like default stages in the pipeline. Okay. And then when we're getting ready to spin up a program to drive transformational change in the skills, the execution, I always ask, hey, I want to align all of this content, this enablement back to your sales process, right? So the reps know exactly what to do in those stages so that they advance a deal once something critical's happened. And nearly all of the time, Rich, like, people can't share that document with me, like, oh, we don't have that. And we can't even change. If it's a bigger business, we can't even change the Salesforce or HubSpot stages, right? So a lot of this bloat comes from a couple of things: really poor clarity, documentation, and understanding on how the customer buys and how you should execute the sales process. Yeah. 2, they are the traditional ones from day one, and then through, we're actually not even enabling and training our sellers at what to do every stage. But instead we just say, hey, Rich, that deal with Acme, drive the next steps on it. So reps just go by meetings. That's what the pipeline usually looks like. Yeah. Discovery, demo, proposal. So they're just at the end of the meeting, like, shit, where do I go next? But I'm on the discovery calls. It has to be demo, right? Then it has to be proposal. The problem is you've never captured any evidence that actually your buyer's really at that stage. So the buyer, you think the buyer is at proposal, that indicates a forecast conversation, sometimes a commit, best case, upside, most likely whatever your forecasting categories are. But really the buyer is still at value, like discovery stage or evaluation stage. So that's why a lot of deals slip. People say, hey, can you come in and fix our problem around deal slippage? And I'm like, those deals shouldn't have been forecasted in the first place. They actually didn't slip.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that we've learned, and particularly if I think about just even my own experience as a sales leader, was that discovery gets taught as a step. One step with one person on one call. And we know that the more complicated the sales process, the more people you need to understand are going to have a stake in that deal, right? And whilst there might be a champion, there's going to be a bunch of other people that they're going to go and have to speak to, and things that they're going to have to go and get achieved inside the business to go and make it happen. And you almost got to go and do discovery with each key person inside the deal, and like use that contact to go and get the very best information to go and present to the next contact, and really arm your champion. So when you think about the reality of what you're seeing in the market and what you're learning, what's the reality of how discovery is getting taught to sellers today?
Well, that's the problem, Rich, is it isn't. Right? Unfortunately, we're still seeing it. Reps are onboarded, and when I say onboarded, they are welcomed into the business. They are shown where the fire escapes are and having the HR handbook given to them. They're given a laptop, a quota, a product, access to Salesforce, and maybe a little bit of product training. Yeah, and then they said, hey, go out there and make something happen. And then in 3 months, the reps don't do what they need to do. In 6 months, they're put onto a PIP and exited, and then they're phoning you up and saying, hey, I hired someone, didn't work. I need you to go and find me a rock star, an A player. And then they spend all of this time spinning their wheels. We call it like hire, fire, churn, and burn, because they're literally just running the same cycle. So people, for starters, aren't even training them. But then to your point, they're seeing discovery as a stage, right? And like anything in life, like building a business, dating, you don't learn everything on the first date with the person, right? And if you did, you tried to, like, you would kill the whole thing, right? Same with, like, we're both into Formula One. On the Thursday, when they kind of get to the track and start, doing free practice on the Friday and stuff, they're not, they don't figure it out all in the first, 10 minutes. They're looking at the data and they're doing different discovery, and they're building hypothesis, and they're testing, and they're running things, right? So like, discovery isn't a stage. You have to continuously discover. But because we label the stage as discovery, consciously or subconsciously, our sellers are just then going, ticking a box and moving into demo and taking limited information they've learned in the first meeting, and then trying to run a complex sales process, or even maybe a non-overly complex, but sometimes perceived as a nice to have, and they lack the value in change context because they couldn't be bothered to go into it or weren't trained to go and do it, and then their sales process falls apart and insert pipeline bloat. Things just get stuck.
I'm sure there's some sort of a quip to be had there around the dating and warming up the tires before you try and put in a hot lap, but I won't go there. Question, which is, so if I think about the reality, when I was learning to become a salesperson, we had a discovery process. It was 15 questions. Everyone asked the same questions, and you were encouraged to ask them in that order because the CEO thought it was the perfect order to ask those questions in. And then once you completed discovery, if they said yes, they were happy to move through to the next stage, then we would move them through to diagnosis, which was the next stage, which had some more different roles based on persona. But it was literally a printout, one physical A4 sheet of paper with 15 questions. And what I've learned since is, and I love this quote, discovery isn't for you, discovery is for them. So if you're talking about not introducing a load of meat and potatoes and parsnips and all that stuff that causes you to get bloated in the pipeline. What's the mentality that you're learning that the best organizations have around how they think about discovery?
Exactly how we like talk about champions, right? You don't just stumble in most cases into a champion unless you're like unless you're building like a lovable, right, where you've got like an army of raving advocates and fans that are loving your product without even speaking to a seller. And then when they come in for like an expansion conversation, they're raving fans. You still need to do some work with them, right? But they are obviously advocating for you at that point. But yeah, one of the things that we're just seeing is reps are just ultimately missing out on the building part of the problem. They're going in and talking about, something that you said earlier. I would say that's like a known problem. You don't want to spend too much time on known problems. The buyer knows the known problem. If it's a real big problem, they're spending all of their time in internal project meetings talking about the known problems, and they're looking for a solution to solve that, right? What we need to do as sellers is think about a differentiation and how do we plant and build a really big problem that buyer might not be thinking about. We do that through reframing. We bring insights, commercial teaching. For us, it's about reframing the conversation around, hey, you've got loads of sales tools in your business. In fact, I was on a call with one of your sales reps the other day, couldn't even see their search bar on Google. They've got so many Chrome extensions, but your entire team are missing the pipeline number and can't hit their revenue goals. What does that tell us? You've got great offices with the bean bags and the ping pong tables and the free snacks. You've hired, air quotes, A players, and you've littered their computer with sales tools. But nobody's got a degree in B2B sales. Like most people listening to this, if I said, hey, raise your hand if you stumbled into sales without a certificate in how to run an enterprise sales process, everyone's hands would be by their side, Rich, right? So we have to educate people and say things like that for them to go, that's one thing we've not actually tried solving. And maybe our deal's getting stuck in the funnel, or reps not being able to cut through the noise and book a meeting is actually less about the tools and more about the capability of the seller, the individual.
So let's say you've got some sales people listening to this and they're going, I feel like I'm a good salesperson, but I realize actually I haven't really been trained ever in what I would consider world-class discovery. Maybe that was a thing that we learned early, but then we just kind of left to do our own thing. What would you encourage them to go and do?
It's hard, right? But you have to drop the ego. Like there's two things I think that have really helped me I dropped out of school, didn't have the best start, right? And I'm by far the best salesperson on the planet, by far the best VP of sales. There's two things that really helped me get to where I am by 33, 34 years old is really, really, really strong work ethic. Like most people I've worked with will know you just won't outwork me. I'm always the first person in, the last person out. Yeah. And that's mainly because I don't want to be working till I'm like really, really old. So I'm like, if I work more, I'll reduce the time, right? But the main thing is I'm a student of the game. Still to this day, like in the evenings, you'll catch me in my office at the bottom of the garden learning something. At the moment, I'm obsessing over like facilitation. Yeah, the way that we're going to turn this business into a really successful business, highly profitable business, is by world-class content, the what, the how, the playbook, and then world-class facilitation, making it so easy for sellers, our learners, to come and take a complex thing and break it down into simple terms that they can immediately apply, right? And then those aren't skills that I was born with. And as a VP of sales who was promoted from being a good seller with strong win rates and a good forecasting accuracy and a really full pipeline, I just stepped up in COVID when like it was really tough, and everybody said, "Hey, dude, take like 4 weeks out and just go on this like leadership course and go and practice all of this stuff." I had to learn it on the job, right? So you just have to become obsessed, and that means you have to drop your ego and go like me. 15, 16 years doing this thing of sales, and there's still loads that I can learn. And do you know what? I might learn a load today, and then tomorrow, because of AI and the speed of things these days, I got a whole load of new skills to learn tomorrow, and I'm cool with that, Rich. So I think it's about just being a student of the game and dropping the ego and going, hey, I've got skill gaps, and that's cool. But if I want to build a great career and earn life-changing money and have freedom, I'm going to have to put that ego to one side and just go and get my head stuck into something. We have this TRAC system: train, role play, apply, certify. And if you stay true to that and you obsess on one or two things that are really holding you back or could unlock something new for you, and you obsess over it, great things will happen. So that'd be my advice. And you can get that from anywhere these days, right? Like when you and I got into the game, there was none of these like buy a course, book a coaching session with a ex VP of sales for X amount of money, right? It was like you got lucky joining an organization where they took this stuff seriously, or you didn't. And then you just went through the role. It took me 8 years to get formal training when I hit BT. 8 years in a sales role. So I got formal training. It was 2 days off site.
And what type of churn were you seeing in the sales team?
Mental. Bonkers. I mean, look, we spoke about this the other day, right? There's definitely a change over the last few years where the same type of people don't longer really exist at scale in the sales organization. Like when I got into sales, there wasn't, although there was still like underperformance, there was way more people that would work their arse off and try and drive the outcomes. Now there's less of that. But the churn is ridiculous. I was interviewing someone on the podcast the other day, and it's like 35% churn across sales organizations is what a lot of people are seeing. It's just absolutely mental. But people churn. And if 30% of reps are hitting quota, there's like 30-40% of people that you're keeping, paying, and they're not making their number.
Yeah. What's the average quota attainment that you're seeing in the market today?
When we kick off programs, it's low. Like most of the time, people come to us when they're like, hey, I'm like 2 quarters out from losing my job. Something has to change. Or it's like a CRO or an SVP that's just got himself a new job in a startup. I don't know, 10, 15, 20 sellers. The CEO told them it's a rocket ship, and they get in, they lift up the hood. The CEO's told them it's a Ferrari. And it actually looks like a Ferrari. They lift up the engine, and there's like a 60-year-old Ford Fiesta engine under the hood, and they close it and go, shit. All right, I can't leave, so I've got to fix it. I'm going to need some help because I don't have an army of enablement people. But like attainment's low, like really, really low, like 20, 30% of reps are hitting quota.
So what have you found to work then? So you talked about salespeople dropping the ego. I did notice then that you followed up by saying you're the best salesperson and VP of sales in the world. So
I think I said far from.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I said far from.
I got
Dude,
it.
I've got ego, but it's not that big.
Okay. I thought that's like a bit like, wow,
that's
like
some claim, right? On a recorded call. Yeah, that's some claim. Yeah, the ego's not that big.
So self-awareness to identify that we've all got skill gaps and we can all learn. I mean, I look back at stuff I did 6 months ago and I hate it. So I think that's a sign of growth, right? When you look back at your work and go, I hate it, rather than, oh, in the glory days, this is how we did it, which is like the classic sort of sales leader trap. And I've been there before, which is where you kind of go, right, let me teach these people. I'll teach them what I did 8 years ago. It's like, no, that's not the right way to coach. So what's the upside? Let's say it is what a sales leader, they've gone into a startup. It's a worse situation than they thought after they've done a bit of audit and discovery. What can they be thinking about to help them avoid this pipeline bloat?
That's our 1 minute warning, Rich. 1 minute warning. So I was actually in an office with an org the other day. We're about to kick off a program for 12 months with, 90 people across new business and expansion renewal. And I said, we should really start with fixing the sales stages and having good clarity on what happens in those stages, because sometimes multiple steps happen in a stage, and then real solid exit criteria where we need to capture evidence. And so if we get that really good and we give it to the sellers and then we quiz them and we make sure they're crystal clear on all of that stuff, less crap will get into the pipeline. And if you KPI them on, say, getting, I'm making this up, 5 opportunities every month into stage 3 from stage 2, and there's really strict exit criteria, and they have to be able to quantify business impact. They have to have validated at that point there's a champion that's advocating for them, and there's a meeting booked on the calendar with the economic buyer. I'm making that up, yeah? Guess what? Most sellers will find a way to do that stuff without even giving them loads and loads and loads of training and coaching and enablement. They'll start asking for stuff. They'll go to YouTube. They'll go to GPT. It's never going to be perfect, but they will get like 10, 15, 20% off the knowledge they need to do that. So like if you're listening to this and we're running out of time on my segment, is get really clear. Google Doc. What should our sales stages be aligned to the buyer? What has to happen in those stages around the exit criteria? And then what are the steps? Is it 1 meeting? Is it 2 meetings? Does something else have to happen? Lock that in, and you will start to see the needle move in a positive way. Won't be transformational. You'll still need to develop highly capable sellers, coach them, develop them over a long period of time, because this is a complex beast. Sales is something that you can't teach in an hour offsite, but you will start to see a lot more rigor and quality opportunities in the pipeline, not the odd one bloated by loads of noise. It's never going to happen.
Have I got time for a question?
Yeah.
What if the customer's ready to buy and the sales process might slow them down?
Mm-hmm. I think it's depending on what you sell. It's extremely unlikely that's going to happen if it's a decent deal. Yeah. And a lot of the organizations that we work with are selling stuff that's 15, 20K up to $1 million and plus, right? And we are seeing that finance are interrogating stuff at 15, 20K unless it's like critical. They want to see a business case, right? So I would say, look, get out of people's way if that is the case. But just because it's an inbound lead, don't be fooled that it's an inbound lead and they say they're the decision maker. We've all got the scars, yeah, from them saying that, believing them. And then 2-3 weeks later, your boss comes and asks you, where's that deal with so-and-so that you were like so sure it was going to happen? Yeah, they're not even answering. Yeah, because I just skipped all of the stuff, you know. So back to F1, that'd just be like, hey, I'm not going to bother turning up on the Thursday, Friday. I'm not going to do quali. I'll just figure it out on the Sunday, shall we? I'll see it too. And then straight into the wall on the first corner. Oh, that didn't work. Should have followed the playbook, you know. So, yeah.
Right.
That's the end of the segment.
Another one.
All right, Rich, you're up. The listeners now want to hear, what have you learned in the last couple of weeks working with sales organizations?
So one thing that we've learned in the last couple of weeks is what the best VPs of sales in Europe are saying about their role. So you ready?
All right. You're on the clock, Rich.
Cool. So we do run a podcast, as you do, James. So Hit Your Numbers podcast is James's podcast. Ours is called What Makes You Tick. On What Makes You Tick, we've had two of the most elite EMEA sales VPs that I've ever spoken to. One was Amit Stark, who worked at BMC and at Splunk. He had carried a massive revenue responsibility for EMEA. And then David DePaola, who worked at CloudBees and a number of other large companies as the VP of EMEA and APAC. And they both said the same line on the podcast, and I loved it, which is, we always told our teams that we are resources to you. So I'm a resource to you. And I was like, that's a really interesting way of talking about your role. It's the kind of like overused, kind of a bit fluffy, that's become a bit generic servant leadership that people talk about. But the way that they talked about it was so clear, which is they genuinely wanted to hire the very best people that they could possibly hire. And rather than telling them what to do and inspecting deals to the nth degree and micromanaging people, they gave them a load of freedom, trust, and autonomy, and wanted them to utilize them as part of deals, utilize them for coaching, utilize them for going and bridging skill gaps, rather than treating them like they were resources. And I think it's one of the commonalities that we've learned, that businesses who get culture wrong and who have high churn and don't attract the type of caliber of talent that they need in the time frame that they need them, is that they treat people as a cost. And people feel it. You're a resource to this business. You cost this much to the business. Therefore, you need to deliver this much value. So therefore, your job is to report back in every tiny little detail of everything that you're doing so that we can inspect that you're doing the right thing. And deal coaching and forecast inspection really becomes interrogation so that we can report that back to the CFO, rather than coaching, enabling, and developing the reps to go and achieve the highest possible result and potential from their region.
Why, look, you probably see this quite a bit, like in the line of work that you're in. I mean, I have a point of view on this, but I'd love to hear, like, why do you think that's happening?
So there's a lot of pressure on leaders. Number one objective for most people, which their objectives are tied to in terms of remuneration and compensation is the number.
Mhm.
So the number is number one. So therefore, your people are just a resource for you to achieve the goal of achieving the goal, which is to make the money. But it's kind of a bit counterintuitive. It's like the same thing that when businesses say, our most important priority is our customers. And I'm going, well, that's that Simon Sinek quote, but it means your people are at least second and probably third. And in a lot of businesses, when the real pressure's on in terms of the financial side, investors number one, customers number two, leadership's number three, team is fourth, you know? And the team will be the first ones to go if the numbers aren't there. So they'll sacrifice the people to keep the numbers. So a lot of the time it's just because the priority, which the incentives are driven around, which drives the behavior of our people are not our priority, the numbers the priority. What are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, I've lived that, right? Like as a VP a few times with investors, you unfortunately there's just unnecessary stress and pressure that's just like the layer cake just comes down from the top, right? You know, I remember a time where we were doing really good, and we needed to do a bigger number, and I ran the numbers and like worked bottoms up and top down and had a good feel that like this is what we needed to go and do it. And then the CEO came back and said, look, great news, we've raised the money, and you can have what you need to go and do it, but then we need to go and hit this number. And I'm like, just how are we going to do that? Where's that? How have we got there, right? These are the things that you learn like building a business, right? Like you see sometimes these rocket ships and you just like assume it's really easy because they grow really, really fast, like Lovable, 100 million in 10 months or whatever. It's like, it must be really easy, right? Like you don't see the stress and the pressure that goes in the back end. I know they're a different beast, just like the other big AI giants. But I think we do sometimes create unnecessary stress. It was a big learning for me around managing up and trying to get inside of those conversations with the board, with the investors, and say, look, this is what I'm seeing. I've got my ear really close to the ground. Yeah, it's going to take a long time to do what you want to do there. And anyone could build a business in a spreadsheet. Yeah, but actually executing that strategy and realizing that plan and the value of that plan is tough. Yeah, so look, I'll give it a crack, but the reality is we're probably going to land here. And this is what our data, not some like HubSpot blog that you guys have read on like some random business, like our business's data based on how we execute the sales process, state of the economy, the people that we've got, the product we're selling, the differentiation, the lack of differentiation, et cetera, et cetera. This is what we're seeing. This is where we think we're going to get to. And then I then have communicated up to my boss, the board, the investors. This is where I think we're going to land. If they still want to say, yeah, go and do 17 times that, right, then I'm going to have to try and do it. But the reality is I've just signed my own death warrant. All right. And that was a big part of why I decided to quit my job and start this business. So I wanted to be in full control of the plan and how I execute that plan. And I think that stress that you're talking about there of more, I need more out of you, Rich. Rich, you're going to have to make more calls. You're like, dude, like I'm working 60 hours. Like I'm not got time to go to the gym, spend time with my family. Like I'm stressed out. Like I want to win, but something else has got to give because I got nothing else to give you. And they're like, oh, you're not good to me then.
Yeah, exactly. Which is the opposite of that whole like I'm a resource for you, right? It's like you're a resource for me. So all of that stuff, the things that sales leaders say, the things that the board say, the things that come out in their company updates, all of them, you can tell from the language that a business uses whether they see their people as investments or costs. And you can see the leaders who offer the opportunity for their team to treat them like a resource. But it has to be a cultural change that the business buys into because it's a longer term way of thinking.
Yeah.
What I realized is there's a key ingredient that you need when you're hiring people, which you'll never find on a CV if you want your team to treat you as a resource. Can you guess what it is?
No, but you tell us.
It's resourcefulness. So if you want your team to treat you as a resource, you have to hire people who are resourceful.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work if you don't have people who are highly resourceful. What does highly resourceful mean? It means high degree of agency, high degree of ownership. It means that we go and utilize the resources around us. If we're thinking from a customer perspective, we're helping customers solve problems inside their own business. We're enabling them to go and be more confident, more powerful, and achieve the goal. we're doing the same with our team. If you don't have that ability to spot and then identify and then develop someone's resourcefulness, they will never be able to utilize the resources around them, of which you are one. And you should be a really powerful one. Now, they might be better at you in different ways. So another part of this is you're not hiring people because they can follow your sales process and use the words on your script to the letter. You're hiring for their brain. You're hiring for their own way of doing things. It's like the whole principles, scales, tactics don't. So if we can give people like the right structure to be free within so that they can be creative and utilize all the resources around them, from the product, from the team, from the leadership with the customers, then you achieve the goal. But you can't do it in secret. You can't just go, sorry, you kind of failed the first 3 months, so we're putting you on a PIP. The real answer is, I was a resource for you this whole time, but you just didn't really ask me any questions. And they're going, what are you talking about? You've not spoken to me in 3 months. So they just you can't expect people to take ownership and be resourceful. You have to, from the very start, look for it in the hiring process. And there's ways of doing that we could talk about. But also you need to just make sure that is the expectation super clear. And you can have checkpoints, and you should be doing one-on-ones where you don't talk about any business. You just talk about them and about their goals and about how you can help them. And the sales forecasting piece should be separate. There should be a process where we do talk about deals, but there has to be that part where you're building the safety and space for people to ask you. Sometimes I don't know what to do. And sometimes it's just, I need some help. And sometimes it's like, I'm really struggling with this thing outside of work. Or sometimes, what have you seen? What else have we done before? Who else has been successful? Who's got that problem? Can we go outside the business? Can we find a mentor? Can I get some additional training? I need some help. Sometimes it's as simple as that, but you have to hire for it, not just expect that people intuitively know that they should be resourceful.
That's so spot on. And the world that we hang out in these startups of different stages of their growth, aren't 50,000 person companies with a 2,000 person enablement team that can go and do stuff, right? They need people that are resourceful. And I saw, I can't remember when it was, a couple of days ago, I saw something that might have been LinkedIn. Some dude sat at his desk by his computer, obviously the leader, the manager. And there was a A4 piece of paper on his desk saying, I'd love to help you, but first have you tried to solve this problem yourself? And it's reinforcing that, hey, I am all about making you better, but I also want you to be able to be a problem solver and figure this stuff out on yourself, because then in the flow of work, you'll better do it live in a sales conversation rather than going, come off that one, pinch yourself. Probably could have got rich on that cold call, but just didn't do it again. And then go to your boss. We want you sellers to be able to execute the highest level in the conversations, so you maximize conversions with every conversation, because they're hard to get at the moment, right?
Yeah,
they're really hard to get. So let's leave the listeners, Rich, with something that they can do. You said something around spotting. Spotting resourceful people. That is one of the problems, is a lot of sellers aren't really good at spotting a deal or not a deal. And I think leaders are equally as undertrained on how to spot good talent. They're looking for A players, but lack of real definition of what those people are and align that to their context. So hit us, what can the listeners take away from today to be able to spot somebody who is resourceful in the recruitment process?
So it doesn't even have to be about deals. You can just ask someone as simple as, tell me about something that you achieved that you didn't know how to do when you started. That's it. So it's just, you started something that you didn't know how you were going to achieve it. And then you find out how they did it, what level of resourcefulness it showed, who they spoke to, what actions they took, what they learned, what mistakes they made. Did they get the result? That's it. Did I go up a mountain I didn't know that I was going to get down safely? And that's what you're looking for.
Love that question. It's actually, as you were saying it, it was making me think myself, right? And that's what we want to do, is we want to really get intimate with that person on the interview. And we don't want to ask them stuff that ChatGPT can prep them for. We want to really understand Richard at the core, across a couple of different characteristics that are critical for my business, which might be different to the business up the road, right? And that's a killer question. It's going to get that person to really stop and think about the situation.
Absolutely. That's it. So they're the two topics for this week. If you want to ask us any questions. If you want us to talk about a specific topic that's coming up in your team, in your Slack channels, something that you're stuck on, then just fire it away. We'll put a link to the community and some of the channels that we're going to be posting this podcast across, so you can ask us some questions. We want to make this interactive and valuable for people. We're hearing loads of stuff in the market, so we've got lots of ideas that we can share. But if you do have something that's really important to you, bring it to us and we'll take it to the field, take down some notes and see what we can bring back in terms of objective insight and ideas that might help you unlock something that you're stuck with.
Nice. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Cool. See you on the next episode.
That was fun. It'll get better.